But I never went out. I just know
All right, everybody. About that time, right? That one's not. But real time, I think it's 6:15. So we better get started. You guys are all here on time. I have a feeling we have a few stragglers tonight. So if everybody could, especially in this front row, just move one seat closer to the center. And we'll have plenty of room for everybody. That way people will be able to sneak in. All right, so I'll say for the people online, I know all of you know who I am. I'm Dr. Jake Tucker, owner here at Good Life Family Chiropractic. We are covering tonight brain Octane. And really, this is diving into one of the biggest fears that we have in the United States, and that's one of getting old. And it's not just getting old. I don't think anybody here is afraid of old age per se. It's what typical Americans end up like as they get older. And so we're going to be diving into a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of dementia, but more than anything, we're going to be talking about prevention. What are the things that cause Alzheimer's, dementia, and other brain disorders that the elderly typically deal with? And also, what are the lifestyle things that we can do to undermine that process so that we make sure that you guys age as healthy as possible the whole way? So, with that said, I want to take a quick moment to recognize you guys. So, if this is your very first class, go ahead and raise your hands. Yeah, I want to honor you guys for being here for the first time. It's not everybody that would give up a Monday night when they could be watching playoff basketball and come out to learn more about their health. So that's awesome. Now, if keep your hands up, go ahead and raise your hands if you've been to at least one class. All right, we do about 10 a year. You guys haven't been to at least one class? Yeah, okay. I was like, you've been to like at least 10 every year for the last 8 years. Yeah, we have about 10 to 12 classes a year. So if you've been to at least one class, raise your hand and hold it up high. You're going to keep it up. If you've been to at least 5 classes, yeah. If you've been to at least 10 classes, keep it up. It's about 10 per year. So if you've been to half of them, if you've been to 20 classes, probably, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, 30 classes, anybody? I would say probably. Yeah, 40? I'd say probably. Yeah. Yeah, we can keep going, but here's the thing. Dennis and Cam have been to almost every class since they started coming here 7 years ago. And then we have about 10 per year. So I could have kept going to 70, but I saw all the rest of the hands start going down. And every single class, what do you think they do afterwards? They come up, they ask me a question relevant to not just what I covered, but also to their health. And they ask for guidance. Showing up is a great first step. But the patients that get the best results are the ones that try to apply the knowledge as quickly as possible. Hosea has a famous verse I can never remember. I think it's 6:5, but it says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And back in Hosea's time, that was absolutely true. However, in today's day and age, with the internet at our fingertips, we actually have an overwhelming amount of knowledge out there. And oftentimes in the health space, it's hard to determine what is relevant and what is not, what is accurate and what is false. Yeah, and so this class is here to help not just provide the information, but also provide the context for which that information comes from. So we're going to be going through a lot of different examples, a lot of different things. So we do have, and I was looking through this earlier, I could probably spend about 6 hours talking about this tonight. Anybody here want to stay for 6 hours? No. Okay, I didn't see any hands go up. So we're not going to do that. So to help me with that, because I will talk that long if you let me, what you're going to do is you're going to write down your questions if you have any. And then at the end, we're going to have time just for those questions. If we get them in the middle, I'm going to rabbit trail. And if I rabbit trail once, then there's more questions we go off. So if you want to ask questions, write them down. We'll get some more. Does anybody need a pen or a piece of paper right now? Anybody? Okay, good. All right, so let's jump into this. So really, when we look at the statistics with Alzheimer's in particular, but you could also include the statistics on dementia, strokes, all the Parkinson's. What we're seeing is a growing tidal wave that's coming down the pike. And if you read anything about aging and politics, especially, what we're realizing is that as this next generation eases into retirement, so this is like my mom and my dad. So my mom's 63, my dad's 69. They are easing into retirement age right now, still working a lot, but also stepping back and taking the reins up. Their generation is seeing increasing rates compared to the last generation of Alzheimer's and dementia. It's projected that by the year 2030, we're going to be spending $1 trillion on Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, you think about the United States economy right now. Can it add even $500 billion sustainably? No, it really can't. But we do know that Alzheimer's and dementia are lifestyle diseases. We're going to talk about the genetic component of it, but when you're done with this class, you're going to realize that these are not predestined things. Just because your mom had it, or your dad had it, or your aunt had it, or your cousin had it, or you even have the gene for it, doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's the lifestyle that impacts it.
I just wanted to say on that one, this talks about $203 per day. That's not even one day in a nursing home. And Medicare doesn't even have to cover half of that. So then you just have to think about how many of these people are being cared for at home.
Yeah.
And all of that's being included in these costs, which is a lot less expensive to the system than putting them in a nursing home. So that's just my little tidbit on that. So dementia, this actually was a book written by Barbara Lipsick. She has kind of a unique perspective. She is a neurophysicist or neuroscientist, and she actually had a brain tumor. She didn't know it at first, and she started developing dementia. I don't know if you can kind of read through here, but she could barely even cook meals anymore. But she was so determined because she'd always cooked, but she couldn't figure out how to measure anymore. She accused her husband and her daughter of hiding the pots and pans because they didn't want her to cook, and she went into rages. She was screaming and yelling at her husband, at her grandson, very suspicious of a lot of people. After they recognized the brain tumor and were able to treat it, then her dementia reversed. That's not the usual story. But again, to post that picture, Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. Most dementias are not reversible. Some of them are. Okay. So if we can do some of these techniques or these lifestyle changes to help stop dementia, then we don't have to worry about the reversal. This one, how many of you have ever taken a Benadryl? At some point in your life, or any other type of an antihistamine. Those are, the drug class is anticholinergic. Anticholinergics interfere with the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that is important for a lot of nerve functions. As nursing students, we teach our students that anticholinergics do 4 things: can't see, can't spit, can't shit, and can't sweat. Okay? Because they block all of those functions. They dry you up, which is why you take Benadryl when you're when you're sneezing and have a drippy, runny nose. But it's going to cause blurry vision. It's going to dry up your nose, your nasal passages. It's going to cause constipation, and you're not going to be able to sweat. Those are common effects of Benadryl or those antihistamines, anticholinergics. Acetylcholine is also very responsible for nerves or muscles, I'm sorry, how muscles contract. It also affects the way that, I don't know if any of you have heard of myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disease that is a lack of acetylcholine receptors that leads to the words, and I just love the origins, and I teach my students the origins of these words because it sticks. Myasthenia gravis means muscle weakness of a grave nature. So because you're so weak, your muscles aren't functioning, you can actually fail to breathe. Your diaphragm's a muscle. If that isn't working, you quit breathing. So anyways, we also know that acetylcholine is responsible not only for all those things, it also messes with your brain. It decreases the brain size, decreases the cerebral spinal fluid, the blood, the fluid in your brain, and causes some brain shrinking. So big problems there.
Rather the anticholinergic
Yeah.
ones do that. The
Yeah.
acetylcholine doesn't do it.
Right,
Yeah.
the anticholinergic.
Yeah, which is the mechanism for how
Yeah.
54% increased risk. And so a lot of people will look at medication and they'll say, you know, oh, well, there's possible side effects. I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing as possible side effects. There's the intended effects, and then there's the co-effects. The co-effects happen in everyone. Whether you get a symptom or not determines whether or not you have the side effect. But something like this, it's attacking everyone's the acetylcholine receptors, which is what leads to this problem. So the more of that you take, the more likely you are to end up with dementia. And so that's the type of thing that we need to recognize when it comes to these medications, not just these ones. We'll get into statins here in a little bit. But the other thing that we can see with this is that walking pace and hand grip strength can indicate dementia risk. So walking pace, who determines that? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Right? Not anything else in your life. You determine how fast you walk. Hand grip strength. Now, is that something that's static or is that something you can gain? It's something you can gain. And so in people that are weak and people that walk slowly, you're much more likely to end up with dementia. But, and we can look at this chart here. This is women, so men don't take this. So you can see your top 10% down here. They have the lowest odds of developing dementia. And the bottom 25%, they have the highest odds of developing dementia. And so that's the amount of grip strength. You want greater than 80 or greater than 85. Then it kind of tapers off as you get older. You know? And part of that just has to do with the law of averages. You know, your top 90-year-old is probably not anywhere close to a 44. You know, but your bottom 90-year-old in that top 10% is a lot closer to that 44. So the longer you can keep your strength, the longer you can keep your walking pace up, the more blood is going to pump into your brain with all of those other nutrients, especially oxygen. We're going to talk about oxygen.
So is it genetic? Well, they have found some genes that are reflective of people with dementia. As you can see, crossed down here, well, the APOE4 gene, 9% of the population has no copies of that Alzheimer's gene, and they will live an average risk of developing Alzheimer's dementia. If you have one copy, which means either mom or dad gave that to you, your risk goes up to 30% of developing Alzheimer's dementia. If you get a copy from mom and dad, then your risk is greater than 50% that you get based on this gene alone. Now, that's not dooming you. Just like other genetic disorders that we found the hereditary link for, it doesn't mean you're doomed to getting that disease.
Just remember too, this is not a coin flip of whether you get it or not. It's relative to this other. And so if it's 1 in 6, then maybe it'd be 1 in 3 relative. So that's just an example.
So I was gonna add too, for example, everybody's heard of the BRCA gene BRCA for breast cancer. Just because you have it, it only increases your chances of developing breast cancer by about 7 to 10%. So yes, you have an increased risk, but there's a lot of things you can do. Same thing here. Okay. So epigenetics, what else can we do? Those 5 essentials are going to come to our rescue. Everybody know the 5 essentials? If not, they're over there. Cheat sheet. So chiropractics, mindset, oxygen and exercise, minimizing toxins and nutrition. And I know I didn't get them in the right order, but it doesn't really matter because we need all 5 of them. Okay. So like it says, regular, moderate to vigorous physical activity can reduce your risk by almost half, a fourth to a half. Low inflammation diet, which we'll talk more about that, reduces the risk of those carriers of that gene by about 35%. Poor sleep increases your risk almost up to 70%. But again, mindset includes good sleep hygiene that can reduce your risk by almost 70%.
So what are our top 5 brain muscles? We're going to go through these things. Number 1 would be a brain shrinking diet. So everybody raise your hand if you live in the United States of America. Okay, so you need a brain shrinking diet. Number 2, cholesterol drugs. If you've ever had a stroke, or if your primary care doctor is a medical doctor and you've been measured with high blood pressure, very likely you're taking a cholesterol drug of some kind.
Or diabetes.
Or diabetes.
Cholesterol meds.
Glyphosate, we could actually replace glyphosate here with just pesticides in general. The increase in pesticide exposure over the last century has gone up astronomically. 100 years ago, we were just starting to get into pesticide use, and now it's the tonnage on pesticide use is ridiculous.
But maybe not, because now the farmers can't afford it. Because the prices have gone up. I
Yeah.
just saw that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And the crazy thing about glyphosate in particular is it is really bad. We've figured out its mechanism of action. It breaks down the lining on the small intestinal barrier, makes it go from semi-permeable to permeable. So all the stuff that your body's supposed to be keeping out of the bloodstream is actually crossing into the bloodstream. What they're finding is the pesticides that they're replacing it with, because Monsanto and Bayer have lost billions with a B of dollars in lawsuits due to damages from glyphosate. They're replacing it with other pesticides that we don't know the long-term effects of, but that in the short term, we're seeing worse side effects. So don't just trust it just because it's quote unquote glyphosate free. We have to go as low pesticide as possible. Next one here, and this one can be all by itself, but stress and cortisol. You have that increased stress, puts your body in fight or flight, decreases oxygen to your brain. And we talked about that a little bit already as a big risk, but a decreased oxygen to the brain, absolutely. But stress and cortisol also do other things, including increasing blood sugar, which leads down that pathway to type 3 diabetes, which is that Alzheimer's disease. And last one here also has to do with oxygen, sleep apnea. We're going to be this one pretty hard as well. Anybody like what RFK did with the food pyramid here? Kind of tipped it on its head. He kind of took all the things at the top, put it at the bottom, and got rid of all the processed junk, right? And so for a lot of reasons, I actually like this a whole lot better. This is probably the best food pyramid that the FDA has come up with. Now, do I trust it implicitly? No, and we'll get more into the advanced pork plan. But we've been eating for generations on this diet, or even my plate, which is very, very similar. We put grains at the bottom. And while fiber-rich foods should be at the bottom, or really the thickest part here, you can see that that is now up here. The grains are so low in fiber that they seldom are beneficial. So cutting the grains out can be a huge step.
So shopping, and I was looking at this, and I was thinking about how does the store I shop at lay things out? A little bit different, but really, yeah. Fruits and vegetables are towards the front. flowers and gifts are over here in front of the cash registers. Your dairy, your meats, your eggs are all in the back, but the bakery's back there too. Frozen foods, so they're gonna get you one way or another. And then the health food aisle is right in here. So anyway, but you have to know how to shop through those stores. Avoid the chips aisle, avoid the snacks aisle, avoid the pop aisles, all those things. And again, those are all in the middle with the health food aisle shoved in. So you can't avoid those others, but that will help. The nutrition plans, I think I probably talked to most of you at some time or another about the 2 nutrition plans that Max Living has. We have the core plan, which, as it says, this is a healthy nutrition plan for families, health maintenance, disease prevention, and then moderate weight loss. Okay, we're looking at healthier options, getting rid of the processed stuff. The advanced plan, we also nicknamed that the healing diet. And so it will help with hormone repair, maybe getting rid of some of that to make sure insulin resistance. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. Lipids, your cholesterols, it'll help lower blood pressure, decrease inflammation, and then, like it says, blood sugars, it'll help lower blood sugars. I know everybody's a little bit shocked when I tell them the best fruits to eat are your berries, your lemons, limes, grapefruits, and Granny Smith apples. The rest of them are higher in sugar, and you need to eat those in moderation and earlier in the day. The ones that, the bananas, the watermelon, those have a high in sugar or glycemic index. So we want to eat those very rarely, but have them for breakfast if you are.
So I always like to summarize this core plan as if you're gonna, everybody should be on the core plan. That was the basic premise behind the second half of my book, Born to be Transformed. If God made it, eat it. If man made it, leave it. If you can pick it out of the ground or you can kill it and cook it, that's going to be generally healthier for you than anything else. However, if you need more support, the healing diet, right, the advanced plan, breaks down into 5 categories. First, we got to curb our carbs, right? So the number one thing people need to recognize is that 100 years ago, this would have been 2 years of consumption of sugar. Today, this pile is your average sugar consumption. So think about what your body had to go through to go from being used to this amount in 2 years to now this amount in the same year. It's just ridiculous how much sugar we've added. So curb your carbs. Number 2, fix your fats. So many of the fats that we eat are so inflammatory, especially when we think about where we're getting them from. Most of our fats come in processed foods. It's not what we're pouring on stuff or spreading across stuff. We barely get butter anymore. We barely get olive oil. We barely get coconut oil. But really, we should be getting those things every single meal. Half of our nervous system is fat. Most of our brain is fat. Our brain utilizes fats for energy. I mean, even things like saturated fatty acids, which have been condemned by the American Heart Association, are necessary for your brain to function properly. Cholesterol, necessary for your brain to function properly. And so if we lower all those things out of our diet and then we go low calorie fats, now we're talking about polyunsaturated fats that become denatured in the process and are by nature inflammatory. And so if we get those in our system and our brain is trying to get fats into it, now we've got inflamed fats going up to our brain. So we've got to get the good healthy fats. So number 2 is fix the fats. 3 is perfect the proteins. Everybody's talking about protein. Protein has been added to everything. The source of your protein matters. We don't want pea protein isolate. That's not a good, healthy source of protein, especially if it's coming from a heavily pesticide sprayed, pea crop. What we want are things that are naturally rich in proteins. Pea has some protein in it, but what's a food that has a lot of protein?
Nuts.
Yeah, any meat, nuts, beans. Yeah, those are the things that are naturally rich in proteins. But those things can also be raised poorly. So like take meat, for instance. You get chickens and you just put them in a cage their whole life and you only feed them grains. Is that how chickens would have raised themselves in the wild? Where God? No, how God designed the food to be raised. That's the closest we want for that source. So wild, or not wild, caught chickens. Good luck finding those. We've got free range chickens where they get access to the outdoors and they're grubbing for bugs and getting nuts and seeds off of the ground, berries, and they're actually, they will kill other animals like mice and they will eat those. They are not vegetarians by nature. They're omnivores. So getting those chickens, beef, cattle, yeah, they taste better when you finish with corn, but corn to them is like candy. In the wild, they would have been ranging on grass, free ranging. And what we see in the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio with wild cattle or even just grass-fed cattle is that it has the perfect ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s. Whereas corn-fed cattle is about 34-1 when it should be about 1-1. And so we want to get that grass-fed as much as possible. And then fish as well. They get farm-raised fish, and that seems like, oh yeah, that's good. Farm? No. In a farm, they feed them corn. Where does a fish ever encounter corn in the wild? Only when humans drop it, right? If we drop it off the side of a boat, they might eat it. But otherwise, they're eating other fish or things off the bottom, or maybe something growing on the top, bugs perhaps at the top. And so we want to get those things as close as possible to their source. So curb your carbs, fix your fats, perfect your proteins, trash your toxins. You got to recognize where most of these pesticides are coming from. And that starts with animal products. You're going to get more animal product exposure for pesticides than any other source. That's where it has. It's this process of eating up the food chain. We get more and more for everything that they eat. So if you're eating a carnivore like shark, it's going to have more exposure to all toxins, not pesticides. Cows that are eating corn are going to have more pesticides than if they're eating grass. And so you just work your way down those things that are cleaner. And then the last one for the advanced plan, and really just in general, a good rule of thumb is avoid your allergens and food sensitivities. But you also have to identify those. And so if you need help with that, I will happily sit down with you and walk you through this. So now we talked about the top 5 bad things. So what are the top 5 good things? When we're talking about foods, we're talking about your omegas. So I mentioned that with beef. What's one of the best sources of omegas? It's not actually beef, fish, and specifically non-predatory fish. Your non-predatory fish. So things like salmon, anchovies, sardines, those are really great sources of your omega-3s are really great. Number 2 here would be avocado. Avocado, it's rich in healthy fats as well as other minerals and micronutrients as well. Rhodiola is a good one here. That's an herb. This is an herb that's actually brain boosting. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. Berries, loaded with antioxidants. Antioxidants are your cancer killers. Anything that causes inflammation, berries address. Antioxidants address. So get as many berries as you can. And then nuts. Nuts, why? Because they're rich in protein. They're also rich in healthy fats, and they're rich in micronutrients and minerals as well. And then vitamin D. Okay, so everybody raise 2 fingers. Now take them, put them together, and put it right here. All right. Anybody feel a pulse? Okay, you should be taking D3. Yeah, no, everybody should be taking D3, and especially right now. We're just coming out of winter months. Sunshine exposure is what generates D3 in our body. You can't get it hardly any other way other than supplementation. And so what we see is during winter months, we lose about 25% of our body's vitamin D3 levels. And this vitamin D3 has been directly linked to all neurologically degenerative conditions. If you are deficient in this, it increases risk for stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. So we don't want any of those things, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we want vitamin D3. How much should you take? Well, the average adult should be taking 5,000 IUs a day just to sustain healthy levels. And so how do you know if you have healthy levels? You have to go get a blood test. So where do you go for a blood test?
Well, you can go to your doctor and request it
And then pay a lot more money.
and pay a lot more money. or you can go to, this isn't an
No, we
advertisement,
get nothing for
but Ryan at 40th and Pine Lake does have a lab, and you can go online, you can call them and say, I'd like to have a vitamin D blood test drawn. I think it's less than $20.
that. Not bad.
I was told 12.
Well, I knew it, but I was gonna say that, but
Yeah,
I
we
knew
didn't want to
I
get
would
your
say, yeah,
expectations
yeah,
up.
I would say under 20. And then they can give you the results. If you want them to send it to your doctor, they can. Or it'll help you deal with it.
Yeah.
Um,
But basically, you want your levels between 60 and 90 nanograms per deciliter, which don't worry about that last part. They'll just tell you the number. If it's below 30, they'll freak out. If it's above 40, they probably won't say anything. If it gets over 100, they'll freak out again because it's too high, but nobody's ever died or even gotten sick with a level over 100. It has to get closer to 200 to actually make you sick. And so most Americans, the average American sits around 40 to 45. But most of the benefits from vitamin D3 actually happen between 60 and 100. So my goal for you is to get you up around that 100 mark this time of year. And then during summer, you'll be able to maintain it easier. And then during winter, we go back to supplementing at higher levels. So this time of year, typically you need a little bit more to build it back up. So go get your levels measured. Everybody has an extra 12 bucks, I hope. Go down there and get it checked. Come back, tell me what it is, and I'll help tell you how much you need. But typically the minimum is 5,000 IU. And if you ever get sick, bump it up to as high as 25,000 IU, so 5 capsules. That helps to support your immune system. So lots of studies showing lots of things about vitamin D3 dropping too low.
And just a couple other things. It helps bone health, and it helps to decrease the risk of some cancers. The higher, if you get it closer to that 80 to 100. So additional benefits of vitamin D. Okay, so stress shrinks your brain. We all have had stress. What does stress do? It's good if you've got a lion coming in,
Yes.
right? It's going to help you figure out where to go to hide, fight or flight, as we call it. But chronic stress becomes bad news. Chronic stress, we know, raises your blood glucose levels, which is not good. It erodes away the stomach lining, and it increases your anxiety, increases your reactivity. So even something that you would normally jump at or get angry about, you're more likely to get angry because you're on edge. Fight or flight, freeze. Okay, you just don't do anything. You can't fight, you can't run, you just stand there. Decreases your memory, decreases your focus, and decreases your calm because you're in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. We need to be able to activate the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. They need to balance each other out to keep us in better state. By the way, parasympathetic helps us go to sleep, which is also important when we're resting. It regenerates our body during that period of time. So be mindful. Again, mindset in addition to sleep, decreasing the anxiety, walk in nature. Now is a great, well, some days are great to go out walking. Every other day, because every other day is 30 degrees. The others are a little bit nicer, but go out, walk. A couple days ago, I was out at Pioneer Park, Holmes Lake, one of those places. And it was crowded. It was noon on Friday, and it was actually crowded with people, which was great to see. The lake, there was a lot of people fishing, walking around the lake, walking their dogs. So lots of things to see and do. Lincoln has so many parks and walking trails. It's just awesome. Mindful eating. Pay attention to what you're eating. Some of you know that we are doing that GI spotlight tests for people who have particular gut issues. you'd be surprised how often we've had to tell people as part of their recommendations are mindful eating. Pay attention to what you're eating, sit down when you're eating, and chew. Okay? Chew. Don't inhale. Okay? You're so much more calm. That activates that parasympathetic nervous system, and people just do better if they're sitting. If you're with others, you know, that's going to help be mindful eating as well. One of the phrases in this other book, the 5 Essentials, there's a line in there, and actually is a whole paragraph, but it says, do we eat to live, or do we live to eat? Kind of a good thing to ponder once in a while. So again, and then journaling. A lot of mental health professionals will recommend that patients journal, write down their thoughts, but they're not necessarily writing what I'm grateful for. It's a good thing to do that just before you go to bed. You know, you're supposed to shut off the electronics an hour before you go to bed anyway. That would be an awesome time to meditate, read your Bible, pray, and write 2 or 3 or 5 things that you're grateful for that day. You'd be surprised how much calmer that's going to make you. Be more able to sleep. Again, help decrease that sympathetic nervous system.
If you double down on that, and you do that first thing in the morning, it's impossible to be stressed and be grateful. You can't have both. They can't exist in the same space. You have to replace that stress with gratitude. Now, another thing to help, let's say you've done this gratitude journal and you're struggling to fall asleep, your heart's still kind of going, thoughts start creeping into your mind after you're done with this. Something called box breathing can really help. And I learned this from Navy SEALs. And so this is how they get to sleep when they only have 2 hours before the next mission and they're gearing up. And so you guys can practice this with me. So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale through our nose only, and we're going to inhale for a count of 4. So ready? Hold. And exhale slowly. And then you do it again. And you notice how, even just behind your eyes, that just got a little calmer. That's because you got oxygen through your nose. Number one, that promotes nitric oxide production, which calms your body, increases your blood vessel elasticity. So your blood pressure drops when that happens. That also, breathing through your nose lowers stress levels by decreasing cortisol. It also decreases the amount of cholesterol that's needed because it's lowering inflammation simultaneously. So you do that over and over until you actually fall asleep. And you focus on the breathing, just like when you're eating, you focus on the eating. Try to taste, try to feel, try to sense all that. We also have to practice self-compassion. Anybody here their own harshest critic? Yeah, no, I'm the only one that knows all my mistakes. And I'm also the only one that won't forgive me for all those mistakes, right? So we have to be willing to do that. Identify them and say, hey, it's okay. I'm just like everyone else. I'm not perfect. I've made those errors and I am working through those, in my own way, at my own pace. But I have to be able to forgive myself, because guess what? God's forgiven us. So we don't have to take the way of the world and not forgive ourselves in that process. Now, when we're talking about stress, though, we also have to talk about the adrenal glands. So let's look at some of these symptoms here of adrenal fatigue. So craving salt. I relate with that one. Overly emotional. I know lots of people know that one. Tired after exercise, and not just like fatigue and like I just worked really hard, but just like exhausted, like you need to go to sleep. Brain fog, weight gain, trouble sleeping, frequent sickness, depression, anxiety, morning fatigue, lightheaded when standing up, and irritability. Those are all signs or symptoms that your adrenals are fatigued. Now, what are the adrenal glands? There's these little triangle organs, more like a pyramid, when they sit directly on top of your kidneys. And a lot of the innervation to the kidneys also goes to the adrenal gland as well. And when you're stressed, you get more nerve activity in your adrenals, you get more blood flow to your adrenals, and it starts releasing stress hormones. And so when you have constant stress, like a lot of us do, now that we're tied and slaves to our technology, it's going all the time, activating stress responses all the time. These things start peaking more and more often. It's because we're using the adrenal glands more, and our bloodstream is flooded with all these stress hormones. One of the biggest ones being cortisol.
The other major one is aldosterone, and that helps with salt and water retention. So that's why you're craving salt, is if your aldosterone isn't as high as it should be. If you're in the fatigue setting, then your aldosterone, your adrenal glands can't secrete enough aldosterone. You also, without the aldosterone, have a lower blood pressure, which is why you're dizzy, lightheaded. So there's a lot to those two hormones, particularly that the adrenal glands produce.
So if you want to lower cortisol, this is a great tool for aldosterone. So ashwagandha is another herb that helps with stress levels, but it's effective, evidence-based, adaptogenic herb. Adaptogen basically means, or adaptogenic means that it can become what your body needs, which is pretty cool. You get in there and it starts to do that. So lowers serum cortisol levels by over 30% stress. I mentioned rhodiola earlier. It's another herb that exerts an anti-fatigue effect that increases mental performance, particularly the ability to concentrate, and decreases cortisol response to awakening stress. Chronic stress rapidly depletes B vitamins, so this has B vitamins in it, making adequate intake crucial for supporting adrenal health and preventing burnout. And then cordyceps, anybody like medicinal mushrooms? Cordyceps is a medicinal mushroom that's highly regarded as an adaptogenic mushroom that supports the adrenal glands, helps the body manage stress, and boosts energy levels, particularly in cases of adrenal fatigue or stress-induced exhaustion. So, sounds like something I might. And then this one, this is a brand new. So I mentioned this in the last class, but we've just launched a new line of products called Kingdom Health Sciences. And this is, you're not going to find this anywhere else. And so this blend is specific to memory. But the number one reason for chronic stress, it's the number one cause of memory and focus issues. And so they put in here a specific type of ashwagandha to support healthy stress response, as well as fermented turmeric. So inflammation, antioxidant, ginger, antioxidant, and galangal support to help support healthy neuroinflammatory responses. You want to take some pesticides?
Monsanto. Again, we talked about the glyphosate earlier. Monsanto, as he said, has been sued many, many times, and they still deny any responsibility.
Yeah, and then at the same time, they're also going to President Trump and trying to give them immunity from all lawsuits because they're losing billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, for all the health stuff that they've caused.
Yeah, so again, Roundup, if you didn't know, Roundup is the brand name that glyphosate is sold under.
Yeah, but just think pesticide. If it's a pesticide, it's going to do that. So this is pretty cool data. If you watch this. So this on the left side, this is age-adjusted deaths from senile dementia charted against. The green line is where those deaths should have been. The red line is not actually the deaths, it's actually the pesticide use.
Huh.
Yeah, glyphosate specifically. And then this side, it's the same red line. They just moved it to this graph with the same years, nothing adjusted on it. That's autism rates.
Oh.
Yeah. Correlation does not equal causation. But when something's so strongly correlated to multiple neurological conditions, and these aren't the only two we could put up here. You could go on down the line. There's a lot of things that we should be looking at, pesticides specifically, glyphosate, and they're looking at mainly corn and soy. Which state loves their corn and soy? Yeah, we do. So this is actually why buying organic matters. So I don't think you need to buy everything organic, but if it's on the Dirty Dozen, you definitely need to. And then pay close attention, keep track of what foods have the highest level of pesticides in them beyond the Dirty Dozen. So hummus.
Does everybody know what the Dirty Dozen is? Okay. So the Dirty Dozen is a list that's put out by the Environmental Working Group. They update it annually, and you can just go to EWG.org.
EWG.org. Or just Google Dirty Dozen and the current year.
Yeah, and then they also have the Clean 15. So the foods that you don't necessarily have to buy organic, and typically the Clean 15 have a hard shell on them that you're not going to eat anyway. I.e., a cantaloupe is usually something you're going to peel off. But the Dirty Dozen are those that should be purchased because you can't wash off the pesticide when you're eating the skin of a tomato or when you're eating carrots or whatever's on that list. So
the shell also protects it from different, things that they don't want to eat, so they are less likely to spread. But these are a couple of examples of just how much glyphosate is in it. So hummus, for instance, there is actually some glyphosate in organic hummus, but the level 65 compared to your conventional hummus, which is 296. And oat breakfast cereal, so an oat-based breakfast cereal, there's none in your typical organic cereal, but in conventional cereal, it's 711. And we look at granola, so again, oat-based, so none detected in organic, but 298. So almost the size of the hummus there, and your conventional granola. And then for snack bars, again, most of these are going to be granola oat-based. You're getting none in the organic and 318 in the conventional one. So it matters buying organic, especially for.
okay, so cholesterol, we need cholesterol. Obviously, we've talked about we need the fats to be able to coat our brain. We need fats to coat our nerves. Anybody's heard of myelin sheath? There are some diseases where that fatty layer that helps protect the nerves. I refer to the myelin sheath as if you have an electrical cord, it's got plastic on the outside. That's your insulation. That's what the myelin sheath is. Okay? It will insulate so that electrical current will travel up that copper wire. If you got a mouse or somebody who likes to chew on that wire, what happens when they chew off all the insulation? You got to shorten the wire. The electricity doesn't get from the wall to the computer. Same thing's going to happen if our body has chewed up that myelin sheath. Those are usually autoimmune diseases that do that. And so then the nervous system doesn't work as well. That signal's not going to get from my leg up to my brain and back down again. So also your hormones all require cholesterol. Just about everything, really. Like it says, you cannot make estrogen, testosterone, or cortisone, or many of those other vital hormones without the cholesterol. Nor can you make a baby if you don't have, I think it's like 15 to 18% minimum body fat to be able to have a regular menstrual cycle, to be able to have a baby. Again, LDL, we refer that's your low density lipoproteins. Your lousy cholesterol, we want that one low. Your HDL, your high density lipoproteins, your happy lipids, we want that number to be high. But HDL actually helps remove the lousy cholesterol from the body, which is why we want that one up higher.
Yeah. Even the LDL has a role in the body. So I've been dealing with this with my dad a lot because they're trying to keep his cholesterol down so he doesn't turn out a clot and not have a stroke. But the LDL cholesterol is actually there for wound healing. When you have a scab, it is on your arm. It is made up of LDL cholesterol. It's the main component of that. And And the same thing happens in your arteries. You don't get heart disease or have a stroke because cholesterol's high. Cholesterol is just a firefighter. You know, you don't blame the firefighter for the fire. You know, if you kicked out all the firefighters, what's going to happen to the fire?
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's a response to inflammation in your blood vessels. Is why that LDL even shows up in the first place. So yeah, HDL carries LDL back to the liver for recycling. And so we do want that there to be able to have that process going, but you don't just want cholesterol to go away, right? So cholesterol drugs. So statin drugs, they work by inhibiting a vital enzyme that manufactures cholesterol. Yeah, the problem is your brain tissue is 60% cholesterol. And so if we cut down the production of cholesterol in the liver, which is 80% of all the cholesterol in your body at any time, no matter how much cholesterol-rich food you're eating, it's still 80% of it at minimum is coming from the liver. And so you're not going to move the needle much by stopping eating cholesterol. So you're blocking it from being able to get to the brain. But then two, the same pathway that you're blocking also produces CoQ10. CoQ10 is a necessary antioxidant that you need for your heart. Your cardiovascular health depends in large part on CoQ10. So if you take a statin, it's actually blocking that, and you're giving yourself an increased risk of heart disease. So pictures, we love pictures, right? So this is the chain. So this is where the medication comes in. This is the statin medication. It comes in and blocks right here in the liver. So nothing beyond this point can happen if you have enough of the statin. And so this doesn't happen, and these branches don't happen. And so, yeah, you're not getting cholesterol production. You're also not getting cool or isopropylated proteins or CoQ10. And all of those things have a role in your body. So we want that done. So if you, statin medications are one of the medications that I will refuse even at risk of death because of all of the negative side effects. Personally, I'm never going to advise you guys to, and I didn't tell them to take my dad off of it because that's his choice. He just had a stroke. Like that's for him to decide and my mom to decide if he should. If they ask me, I'll give them my opinion, but they've already heard my opinion too.
Okay, so these are a couple cardiologists that have some interesting things to say. This George Mann was actually working with our lead in the Framingham search studies, which were over many, many years. They studied a large population. And he's saying that saturated fats and cholesterol in the diet are not the cause of coronary heart disease. That myth is the greatest deception of our century. I think we've said that. Cardiologists are saying that. Research cardiologists. Stephen Sinatra, the reason more cardiologists haven't focused on the evils of sugar and simple carbs rather than cholesterol is that there is no patent on blood sugar. Basically, I'm saddened to admit most doctors are indoctrinated or educated by the pharmaceutical industry. There's no money in talking about studies that show the relationship between excess sugar consumption and heart disease. Pharmaceutical companies. Keep the world going, I guess, or not. Keep it safe. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I know how something works.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. So, more research, fibromyalgia. Again, that's one of those diseases or conditions. We don't know how to diagnose it. There's no blood tests. There's no x-rays. There's no scans. The best way they can give somebody the diagnosis of fibromyalgia is if you have pain in 12 out of 18 different sites. That's it. Trigger point pain. I think it's 12 out of 18 or 11 out of 16 or something to that. They used to just Again, it was women that primarily complained of pain everywhere. So what is it? She's depressed. Let's give her an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety med, and tell her to go away. At least we've got people that are believing the pain is real, but we still don't know what it is, how to treat it, unfortunately. Well, the medical community does. Bipolar and depression. The EFAs are block the abnormal signals in the brain, which is present in depression and mania. Those EFAs boost serotonin levels in the brain. Again, another study from psychiatric. That's not psychiatric. I don't know what that is. It should say psych, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think it's a typo. Okay. Alzheimer's disease, weekly consumption of fish is shown to significantly reduce the risk of dementia, as well as Alzheimer's disease. EFAs protect the vascular system, reduce brain inflammation, and aid in the regeneration of nerve cells. Again, if you look at that date, that's old. That's 24 years old. We've known this.
And so if we had all applied it right away,
Yeah.
our risk of all these things would be. What is an EFA? That's essential fatty acid. Essential meaning our body doesn't produce it on its own. And fatty acid meaning what it's made up of. So our body doesn't produce these as fatty acids. So omega-6s and omega-3s are an example of this, but we're really looking at omega-3s for their benefits. So a lot of people, and I just had a conversation with the lady today who's going to go to Costco, and she's going to get her supplements there. So let me show you just as far as your omegas, what you're getting. So this is directly from the Costco. So you're getting one soft gel, 30 per container. I think that says that there's somewhere. 10 calories each, right? It goes into the cholesterol and the fats. Natural fish oil, 1,000 milligrams. So you're getting 1,000 milligrams. Here we're getting 1,400 milligrams. Okay, so we're a little bit better on how much fish oil. 300 milligrams of total omega-3 fatty acids comprised of unknown amount of EPA and DHA and other fatty acids. Here, we get total omega-3 fatty acids of 1,120, so almost 90% of that is your omega-3s. And that's made up of almost exclusively EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA are the ones that help the most with brain health. Those are the ones you want. They're also the ones that help the most with inflammation. And so whether you're taking it for a bad knee or an inflamed brain or an inflamed heart, this one works better than this one because it has more of this. And in what amount? Well, we're talking about a difference of 1,400 to 300. So that's more than 4 times. And then we're talking about unknown amount there, where this is almost 50% between one and the other, making that up. So how much more should you be willing to spend on this to get the same value? At least 4 times. And that's what we see. It's about a $20 bottle of low quality and a $40 bottle. Not even 4 times. We're only charging you 50%. So much better option on that. Now, can you find better options than this? Yes, that's just Costco's example. The best one, it's the best one we can find, not the cheapest one, but the best one that we can find. So if you want to get more bang for your buck, you can trust me. You can try to do the research on your own and find a better deal, or you can, just go it on your own. So we've got a bundle today. So we got all this stuff, right? Everybody here wants better brain health, better memory, better, decreased risk of having Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and some of these other conditions. So we put them into a bundle for you. So we got the memory, got the omega-3, we've got the adrenal balance, and we've got the vitamin. So today only, we're taking 20% off of the bundle, and you can buy as much of it as you need. Now, the problem is we don't have enough in stock for anybody to get a full bundle today. So it's pre-order only. If you want to take home pieces of that we do have, you can take home those pieces if you're buying the bundle. Get as much as you can, but it's pre-order, prepaid. So what you'll get out of the bundle is 30 days of memory, stress, and cognitive support. Then we're gonna throw in, because you guys are here and we like to reward the people that are here, we're gonna throw in a complimentary sauna session. So if you're not already getting sauna, not already paying for sauna, you get a complimentary one. Then you get one body scan analysis. So how much visceral fat you have, how much body or how much muscle percentage you have, body fat percentage, all those things. And then we're going to do one complimentary single region stem wave session, just for buying the thing that you were already going to buy after me teaching you about all the reasons why you need this, right? So it's $325 worth of value for just $130 if you get it today. Since it is pre-order, I'm going to open that up online for anybody that's watching that live today. If you just want to text the office, 402-413-8825, I'll get that order processed for you this week so you can pick it up next time you're in the office. So that's the bundle. That's what we want to get for you guys.
Okay, sleep apnea. Everybody knows what sleep apnea is. You quit breathing while you're sleeping, usually multiple times an hour. Untreated sleep apnea, as you can see, increases high blood pressure, increases the rate of heart attacks. When do most heart attacks happen anyway? First thing in the morning, okay? Increases your risk of stroke, obesity, and diabetes. Why? Does anybody know why? Sleep apnea, huh?
Lack of nitrogen.
It's part of it's a lack of oxygen, but what did we talk about? The sympathetic nervous system. You think your body gets a little bit scared when it's not getting the oxygen that it needs. Okay, so it's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system, which we've kind of talked about a few times tonight. That fight or flight response increases the cortisol, increases your diabetes, your obesity, your risk for strokes, increases all of that other stuff. Can increase the risk of or worsen heart failure. Again, your heart has to work harder when you're not breathing well to get that oxygen and that blood pumped around. Arrhythmias, which are irregular heartbeats, again, more likely if you have sleep apnea. Does increase the risk of having work-related or driving accidents. Why? You're so tired, you fall asleep and you don't even know that you're falling asleep and there's nothing you can do about it. You just are driving and you're asleep and your car goes wherever it goes. Okay. So deep sleep, we talked frequently about deep sleep, about REM sleep. That's going to help detoxify your brain quite a bit. You can see norepinephrine is, and we're sleeping, norepinephrine is a partner with epinephrine in the sympathetic nervous system. So when we're sleeping, our EEG, which is our brain waves, we have less norepinephrine because we're in rest and digest. We have fewer brain waves. We're deeper spikes up and down compared to this one. When I'm awake, when I've got a lot of norepinephrine floating around, and then I've got a lot more, they're more narrowed, but they're also more frequent. Okay, so I'm more stimulated here. My body's trying to clean out a lot of that while I'm sleeping. That's why sleep is so important.
I noticed here too that it's relying on a lot of cerebrospinal fluid influx, but sleep apnea, or even just not even getting into a deep enough sleep, it can be either. It decreases all of this and keeps you closer to this. So you're not getting as much detoxification. You're not getting the norepinephrine levels in the right wave patterns. It's just not working the right way. So when we look at sleep apnea, you know, this is a common type of obstructive sleep apnea here on the right. But just look at the difference here. Obstructive sleep apnea, we've got a blockage coming here and here, right? No air can get through there without a lot of snoring, right? That's what's happening back there. Through here, through normal, when you're in that ideal sleeping posture with your sleeping roll under your neck, right? Then you should be able to get plenty of air through your nose, ideally 95% of that air should be going through your nose and just the smallest amount coming through your mouth. And obstructive sleep apnea, you're just trying to get air in however, and so everything's wide open and it can't get through. And so, yeah, my dad had this, it would sound like he was choking sometimes on the air, but more just that soft palate as it was falling into the back of his throat. And so we definitely want to make sure that that's functioning properly. So what are the key elements of this? Well, what controls the soft palate? I've talked to you guys about the importance of the vagus nerve. It's one of 12 different cranial nerves that exits off the top of your neck. Another one is the trigeminal nerve. Maybe you've heard of trigeminal neuralgia. That's where you get nerve pain in the trigeminal nerve. It also controls and goes out to the soft palate. So when that nerve is not firing properly, that can inhibit the proper function of the soft palate and make that fall back along with your tongue into the back of your throat and block that off, which is why getting that nervous system functioning so properly is so important for people with sleep apnea, because it is going to inhibit that function from properly happening if you're subluxated in the spine. The other thing that's inhibited when you're subluxated, especially at the top of the spine, right around this area, is the cerebrospinal fluid. And so we just saw on this last slide here, as cerebrospinal fluid comes in and it brings through that lymphatic system the metabolic waste and metabolic byproducts out of the brain and back out of your body. If this is being obstructed here by the top two bones in your neck, it is blocking that cerebrospinal fluid from being able to come up and get into the brain in the first place to be able to drive that lymphatic system. There's actually two parts of your nervous system that control that cerebrospinal fluid pump. It's not like blood where there's soft muscles along the pathway to get it there. It's actually driven by motion in two places, the tailbone here. So you have to move your tailbone to get it to pump fluid up. And then the skull itself. The skull actually opens and closes. And it does more so in babies because their sutures aren't as close together, they're more open. But even in adults, you can, if you have fingers like a chiropractor, you can actually feel it. And every 3 to 4 seconds, you'll feel it expand and contract, and expand and contract. And it does better the more that sacrum moves, the more that pumps down there. So the more you walk, the more you exercise, the more you go, the more that pump up and pull down effect you're going to get with that. But subluxation interferes with that. Where's the two most important areas I said in your doctor's report that are going to impact structural correction, but also your neurology, is occiput and atlas right there, disrupting the vestibular cortex. So being able to self-correct, being able to know where you are in space, but also that sacral tilt being down there. If this is off, if the foundation is off, that is the key to biomechanically correcting the spine. If your coccyx is stuck this way, guess what which direction your spine is stuck? That way. If it's stuck this way, you're stuck like that. If it's stuck this way, you're stuck like that. And you kind of do other things to adapt to it. This is where scoliosis comes from. This is where loss of curve and your low back comes from. That's why sitting is so bad for you guys. I know, I'm sorry I made you sit for more than an hour tonight, but that's why sitting is the new smoking for so many reasons, but so much of it has to do with neurology. And so we need that to function. We need to keep pressure off of the trigeminal nerve. We need to make sure that there's not inflammation around that trigeminal nerve, and we need to keep that healthy. And so this is from Posture in Your Brain. It was Roger Starr. He said 90% of the stimulation and nutrition to the brain is generated by movement of the spine. So this is where sitting is the new smoking. When you sit for too long, when you don't move, when you don't know spinal rehab, the wobble exercises and the traction, you don't get that stimulation. And the main way that comes is not just cerebrospinal fluid. That stimulation is also neurological. Each of these joints, each segment has 8 joints, 8 to 12. Each segment here has 8 to 12 joints. And in those joints are little nerve endings called mechanoreceptors and proprioceptors, meaning how is it moving in space? And it feeds that back up into the brain. And if something stops moving properly, that sends a signal straight up to the brain, in particular the vestibular cortex and cerebellum, but also the prefrontal cortex, which is where you live. You live here and you experience everything through those nerve endings in your body. When it gets that bad signal because it's stuck, all of a sudden your brain says, ah! You wake up.
Yeah.
It stresses out. It creates a cortisol dump. And you get all this going down here, and it sends stress signals back to wherever it's stuck, and it creates inflammation. And the inflammation there is there to heal it, but guess what inflammation also causes? Pain. And if you don't actually fix the root cause of that pain, and you just take a Tylenol, you develop chronic pain. Because Tylenol actually blocks the pain signals from being able to transport up. And so now, not only do you not know what's happening, you can't get the proper signaling back from the spinal cord to the brain, you create this vicious cycle. And so people tell me, oh yeah, I need my nightly Tylenol. I'm like, please no. If you need a nightly Tylenol, you're already so far gone, you don't even know it. Right? The same goes for all the other painkillers. You can get just as dependent on those as you can on other things. I was reading a study that estimated that the largest cause of chronic pain is actually
Yeah, so,
it's the thing that we use to numb the effects
first thing
and
people
keep us
say,
from
though,
addressing the root cause. And so really what we should be focusing on is proper function. This is where chiropractic comes in. Not only are we going to make sure that everything's moving properly, but we're going to make sure that the nervous system is firing properly, that you're getting that cerebrospinal fluid flow moving properly. And so upper cervical misalignment just by itself. So we're going back to trigeminal neuralgia. It can create spinal cord tension. It can create venous drainage problems. So the veins don't drain back to your heart properly. It can block arterial blood flow up to your brain. It can block cerebrospinal fluid flow. It can inhibit balance. Several people in this room have had that. Stress, it creates stress. It creates pain. And it creates altered function. So this is another study that they looked at, and they saw that when they did this, so this is how you diagnose Alzheimer's disease, because it's the most accurate study. And they do a spinal tap in the lumbar spine. And they measure these things. They measure beta amyloid plaque, phosphorylated tau, and total tau. Proteins. These are types of proteins. And what they saw was that when you had high levels of p-tau and low amyloid, so think about this. In Alzheimer's patients, what do you have a lot of in your brain? Plaque. When you have low levels of amyloid, down here, you're at increased risk for Alzheimer's. That's their diagnosis. You have Alzheimer's when you don't have amyloid down here. You have high levels of that p-tau protein. So the p-tau is not getting up to the brain. The amyloid is not coming out of the brain. It's a lack of cerebrospinal fluid, which is driven by the sacrum not functioning properly, which is all because you didn't want to pay for your car. Right? Basically what it comes down to. And so we're talking about this, and yeah, there are so many different factors that are cause and effect, but what drives everything is your central nervous system. You know, for your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for a cut on your leg to heal, signals have to run uninterrupted from the brain down the spinal cord, out the nerves to every organ, cell, and tissue. That's the way God designed it. So this is my dad from a couple days ago. Yeah, it's true. He did. About 3 Thursdays. And I mean, thank God he's this good, because he was laying on the floor, not able to move, and we didn't know if he would make it. I was here on a Thursday night and got the text message. I wasn't sure if I was driving home that night and flying home that night. I wasn't sure if that would be, or both, or jumping on a train, planes, trains, and automobiles, or if I would be there to plan a funeral or set up, hospice care, or what we were dealing with. I don't know if I would be. I didn't know if I was going to be in the hospital with my dad. But you guys have all heard his story. Back when Dietrich was born, that was 11 and a half years ago, he already had congestive heart failure. And why did he have congestive heart failure? Well, because he was failing all those categories that we just talked about with brain. But instead of causing him to have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, it was creating congestive heart failure. And what were the main drivers? stress, right? He was working 120-hour work weeks, sitting in front of a computer every single day, not getting enough movement. I showed you his x-ray. He had that hunching, the old man hunching, over 35 degrees of tilt right through there, doubling his risk of, a cardiovascular event. And here he is with congestive heart failure. And thank God we intervened when we did. Thank God he came in when he did. Thank God he got adjusted when he did. Thank God he changed his nutrition when he did. Thank God he started moving his body and getting everything taken care of. It saved his life. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I think that was a Hezekiah moment for him, where God intervened in Hezekiah's life and he got 15 more years. God brought my dad back into my life at the right time to give him those 10 more years, those 11 years. And yeah, he probably wouldn't have made it to Dietrich's kindergarten. But we took him through the process over the next 2 years. We got him better with his spine and x-rays. He lost 80 pounds. Since then, he's lost another 70 pounds. Like he's 150 pounds lighter than where he was 11 years ago. And thank God he was, because if he hadn't, he would have died much sooner. And he's not dead. He's alive. They're giving him really good hopes for most recovery. They think he'll get most function back. I pray that it's more than that. But I think about, why was it this year? What were the factors? So some of you, I've told about what my parents have gone through with animals. About a year ago, animal control showed up to my parents' farm based off of an anonymous tip that they were mistreating their animals. And they had over 150 animals. And they found one dead bunny, baby bunny, which if you've raised bunnies at all, baby bunnies die frequently. And so they confiscated all the animals. And then my dad spent the last 10 months or so basically trying to stay out of it. Yeah, he was accused of 3 different felonies for animal mistreatment based off of this one dead bunny. They took my dog. They took my niece's dog. I have no idea where they are. Can't get them back. And my dad's character has been dragged through the mud. Somebody who's never been violent to anyone or anything in his life. Yeah. And so you can imagine the stress. He was going into that, from this on down, he was one of the most disciplined leaders I've ever seen. He's indulged in so much more over this last year, even with us trying to help him. He had a mini stroke right before everything happened. Barely affected him, but he wasn't quite all in the space he needed to be. And so we were trying to get him to make some changes to bring some of those numbers back into alignment so that he wouldn't have another stroke. And unfortunately, you can't outrun your lifestyle. He would take the supplements, but he would still eat the chocolate cake. And he has had, I don't know where he's at right now, but he's had sleep apnea. It got better as we corrected his spine, but those years of decreased oxygen consumption, and his cholesterol levels were high. We knew his cholesterol levels were high, but that's always a sign of inflammation. And so we were trying to address the root causes of the inflammation, but if you keep eating chocolate cake, you're not addressing the root causes of inflammation. And so we did. He had a stroke. And, one of the first things I asked them when I got there is, have you guys happened to test for vitamin D? Why did I ask that? Increased risk of stroke, increased risk of all these brain-related conditions. Did they test for vitamin D3? No. I got them to order the D3 test. They came back, it was 42. They're like, oh, it's 42. I was like, oh, it's 42.
Yeah.
It needs to be 60 to 90. Ideally for my dad, over 100. So he's taking 5 a day.
Is he?
25,000 IUs every single day. And I want him to reorder the blood test every week until he gets back into that normal range. But guess what's blocking that? He's taking a statin. We're blocking cholesterol production now. And so because they're blocking cholesterol production, what's his vitamin D absorption? He's going to have to take more just in order to be able to get that into his body. And so in a lot of ways, I thank God for the doctors that were in that emergency room that knew how to save his life. And I get why they want to lower his cholesterol right now. They do not want him to have another stroke. And because he's already had 2, he's at the highest risk for that. And if you can get the cholesterol out of his bloodstream, then he's not going to have embolus or embolus is the word of the thing. Thrombus. Yeah, he can't throw something that's not there up into his brain. But at the same time, there's also so many other factors underlying. We want to keep him around for the next 20 years, not just the next 5 months. So it's a sad reminder of why things matter and why we get choices. But it's a fitting one for sure. So we look at this and we see what are some of the signs or symptoms that you might be getting a lack of cerebrospinal fluid to your brain. Well, if you get headaches, it's probably being blocked out there. This is a MRI of somebody who doesn't have a curve in their neck, obviously, and you can see what's happening to the cerebrospinal fluid in their brainstem. It stops. So what does that do to the pressure in the brain? It increases it, and it increases your risk of having so many things. So many things. This is not my dad's, by the way. But that pressure in your brain is going to cause stress. So what are you likely to struggle with?
Sleep.
Getting to sleep, right? And then, this is something my dad had all the time. Sinus issues. He got sinus infections almost constantly because all that increase in fluid up there, well, it's going to start going somewhere just through osmosis. So it ends up in the sinuses often. Numbness in hands. Yeah, if you can't get cerebrospinal fluid up and down to nourish it, those nerve endings, they don't get the nutrients that they need or the signals anymore. Acid reflux, or sometimes, most often what we see is no symptom at all with this. Doesn't show up until it's Alzheimer's or dementia, and at that point, most of the time, it's too late. So the best time to do something about this is way before you get a symptom. In fact, the research shows that you can see Alzheimer's before you can see the symptoms of Alzheimer's about 20 years in advance. And so if you can catch it 20 years beforehand and do the things that need to be done, you won't have the high risk of having the disease. And so I just implore you guys, do it. Make a decision and do it. Like whatever it was today that stuck out that you're like, I need to do that, or I didn't even realize that. I need to start moving with something in that. Start doing that. So one of the biggest things that we've seen recently in the office is an uptick in cases of diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic disorder, and insulin resistance. So Cheryl and I have been going back and forth, and Cheryl's going to be out of town for a couple of days, so we wanted to give her a weekend off. But on Monday, May 11th, we're going to be doing our Conquering the Blood Sugar Battle class, because that is one of the main ways that's driving inflammation in your entire body, just across the board. Whether you're talking about strokes, or you're talking about Alzheimer's, or dementia, or any of these neurologically degenerative conditions. We're going to be doing that on Monday, May 11th at the same time, so 6:15 p.m. If you know a teacher, we want to appreciate them. However, they don't have time to be appreciated until after school gets out. So we're going to wait until the week after school gets out for LPS. And the week of May 26th through 30th, we're going to be taking extra special care of them. So they will be able to come in and get a free nerve scan, just see how their nervous system is functioning, free consult with myself or Cheryl, depending on how busy we are and who's available at that moment. And then they'll get, if they want to continue, we'll do a discounted exam, x-rays, first adjustment. So if you know any teachers in your life that are dealing with health issues at all, or just need a chiropractor, and who needs a chiropractor? Everybody. There's no exceptions. Everybody needs a chiropractor. Get your teachers to this so that they can get the biggest discounts, they can get the biggest, the most help on that week. And they can come in before that. That's just the week we give. We're just assuming that they don't have time here. So stay plugged in. Those of you that have been at every workshop that I've ever taught, did you learn something tonight?
Yes.
I hope so. I learned some things, and I learn some every time. So just keep showing up, and we'll keep plugging away at these. Any final words, Cheryl? Okay.
Get your vitamin D levels.
Yes, please. All right, we'll open it up to questions if you guys have any.
Oh, it's like sixth grade or whatever. Loved to ice skate.
Mhm.
My feet come out from under me and bam, right out on my tailbone. With that effect, sleep out of the eye.
Yes. So the interesting thing about the tailbone, so at the bottom of the sacrum is a little bone called your coccyx, which is typically what we refer to as your tailbone. It is the only spot in your entire spine that the bone attaches to the nervous system. The rest of it is flowing between, and it shouldn't touch. And if it does touch, it just moves off. But that's the only place where it directly attaches. And so if I was to make like an electric board and touch on the different spots where it affects, if I touch this, it lights everything. And so if your tailbone is off and you tell me you have a symptom, I'm never surprised. Makes sense? Yeah. Yes, sir.
I just had really,
Okay.
it was just a comment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
What if, like, we were talking about sleep, I mean, I have sleep apnea, so they were talking about nose breathing. What if you're a mouth breather?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Like,
tough.
I don't, yeah, and
So,
they want you to like strap your mouth shut, but I'm
Yeah.
like, that seems worse to me.
yeah. So in some ways it should have been fixed when you were young, because oftentimes we develop as a mouth breather because our palate didn't open up properly. And so it collapses. And so the only way to get air in is through a mouth. And then we develop all these, muscle memory habits that make it almost impossible. The best way to do it is to work with some sort of respiratory therapist or myofunctional therapist. Try to train yourself to do those. And it takes time. That's where
I do.
Yeah, that's where mouth taping usually comes in. I would never do mouth taping without professional oversight. And no, I'm not trying to plug myself for this. I don't know that. I don't know how to do that. But if you're a mouth breather, something was off when you were young, probably a cranial misalignment, subluxation type of situation. And there may still be some things that you can do, but it's harder, which most things are.
Full mask.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing
I do
breathing
full mask.
exercises during the day would help that.
Yeah, so you can train the habit side of it just by box breathing, intentionally going through that routine. And it will lower your cortisol levels just to get in the routine of doing box breathing. It will also increase the nitric oxide production as well, which is great for blood pressure, and that in turn lowers cortisol levels. So, yeah, good question. All right. Go get your 20% off. If you're not buying the bundle, everything's 10% off tonight, so you can stock up on whatever you need. Oh, and 50% off sauna as well if you're not getting the bundle.
Is this, we can watch this again on computer?
Yep, it's still live streaming right now, so you'll hear your question if you go back and listen to it on that. It's youtube.com/@Dr. Jake Tucker.
That, say it again.
/@Dr. Jake Tucker.
Is it DR or DSC?
DR.